Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Fiedler. As Seth mentioned, I am the only PyPI safety and security engineer that exists. That's a little terrifying, but hey, we got to start somewhere. Back in July of 2025, we had a really bad phishing campaign attacking PyPI users, maintainers, and I kind of want to walk you through what that looked like at kind of every step. Hopefully, we'll get through all of it in the time allotted. So, as I mentioned, this is me. You can find me online. If you scan that QR code, it'll be on every slide. You can find more of my links, and I will publish some version of these slides there later on this week. But my job in one kind of sentence is to kind of keep the 100,000-pound open source truck from rolling off a cliff, right? There's a lot, right? And that's a fun thing, and things get bigger. PyPI is huge. Registries don't have time to go to sleep. We are serving over 11 petabytes a day. 9 petabytes a day at peak, and that's 1 terabits per second. The scale is just going up and to the right. The numbers that I pulled for this stats like 2 weeks ago are vastly outdated already. And we're getting over 900 new projects per day. And the scale of that is kind of increasing as people learn about Python, about PyPI, about packaging. They're using modern tools to kind of help them build things and publish them. They're not the only ones doing it. PyPI could also not do this without generous infrastructure sponsors like Fastly. So if you get a chance, thank you, Fastly. Visit their booth. They're an excellent service, even if you don't run a registry. So why do attackers go after package repositories like PyPI? We are also not unique in this regard. Other registries like NPM, RubyGems also get these kinds of attacks, but I'll tell you about ours. But why do they go after them? Because it's easier to phish a maintainer because that compounds the impact of that phish attack. If I have to go after every single one of the users to try and phish them when they're companies, that's a harder thing for attackers to do. So they want to work upstream, and then that has that multiplicative effect. And you don't have to work as hard as you used to in the past. You can go after people who are doing insecure things and then kind of proliferate your attack that way through CI pipelines, production deployments, and you've heard of these attacks. Hopefully, I'm not giving you anything brand new, but I'll call out a few notable ones later. This is the most highest leverage phish attack we see in the industry right now because, again, it just proliferates very quickly. Because not everybody is a security engineer, right? Not everybody has a security team. Not everybody has the ability to spend their full time on how do we secure hardened things because it's an arms race. We don't know that this is now secure. We are making things more secure as we go, as we find the new vectors. So this attack proliferated in June where an email was basically sent out that looks a lot like a PyPI email. The PyPI codebase warehouse is open source. You can read it. You can generate emails by signing up to PyPI and receiving them. So they didn't have to work very hard to make it look like it was from us. And the emails they get are from you providing your email in metadata to your PyPI package. So they can just go and say who are the maintainers of all these projects. And if you didn't put it in your metadata, you might have put it in your GitHub profile. So it's not hard for them to figure out who to go after, and it's also very cheap for them to scrape all this information and automate lots of spam because they don't have to get everyone. They only have to get one. And they got a lot. So a lot of people click this link, and sometimes we do send emails like this that say, hey, we need you to take an action. And the email here looks totally normal if you kind of aren't really looking for the subtlety. Some of you noticed it on that previous slide, and now I'm making it very, very clear. One that I learned about fonts, that's called a descender, anything below the line. So I learned something when I was kind of working through this. And on your phone, you're not going to see this. If you hover on the link, you might notice it in the corner. Most of us are busy, and it's oh, PyPI is asking me to do something. Let me click and go and do it. So when you're kind of like going through these, you're going to get phished. Like, well, I've been phished, not badly, but like it's going to happen. You're going to get an email. You're going to click something that you may not have expected to do so. So very often when we talk about phishing attacks, the news articles will say, oh, they built a pixel-perfect version of that website and drew people to it. And the answer here is they didn't. They literally stood up a proxy service in front of PyPI. Anyone can do that. You could do that today. It's fine. That's how the internet is designed to work, proxy to proxy. Fastly is a proxy to our backend, and this was one more proxy in front. And in this one, they basically took every single time that we produce pypi.org and changed it to pypj.org. So they're rewriting everything on the fly, and it works. They didn't have to take the time to build PyPI. It's the interface you're familiar with as a maintainer. It works the way you think it should work, but you weren't at the right website. So the flow that any proxy does, and this particular one does, is you post your credentials through the proxy. The proxy then relays them back to our backend, and we accept them. They rewrote every single header so that way it looked normal traffic to us as well, right? Like everything looks normal here. Lots of people will use like a corporate VPN proxy or a SOX proxy. So we have to allow for the affordance of proxies that exist in the universe in order to serve the end users. PyPI sees all of this information, and then you input your username and password, that gets passed along. You input your OTP, your 6-digit code, and that gets passed along. And the attacker doesn't even really care about the fact that you gave that token that's only valid for 30 seconds, because when we respond back to you with a session cookie, it's like, you're welcome, here's your grant to be part of PyPI. That's the thing they want. So now they have this session cookie where they can be you and continue to operate as you for the duration of that session cookie, which is about 8 hours. It feels like a normal login. So in this incident, we go through a bit of a timeline of how it kind of opens up. The first user report, end user, was like, hey, I got an email. This looks kind of weird. Like, we didn't detect this, and it came in on a weekend. I don't work weekends. I work full-time Monday through Friday, and we have some volunteers who receive that email, and they're like, hey, that's weird, but I don't know what to do about it right now. Like, what can we do about it? One volunteer admin escalated it that evening on Saturday night, and they opened up an abuse report to some of the parties that are involved, such as the DNS registrar, the hosting at Cloudflare. And a lot of these different vendors have different forms to report abuse, and they have different varieties of way they handle abuse reports. For instance, Cloudflare will say, thanks for the report. We will absolutely send this to the person you're reporting. Like, okay, so I'm telling you that someone is committing a crime, and you're going to tell the person committing a crime that they're committing a crime? They don't care. They know they're committing the crime, right? And like the DNS registrar, right? Like they're a dime a dozen. There's so many of them, and they all have different opaque processes and how they do things. And they also kind of say, hey, we are going to send this on to the person who you are claiming is abuse, but we might also kind of do our own internal processes to evaluate what this person is this real abuse? PyPI doesn't have a 24/7 security operations center that many enterprises do. We don't have a lot of things that many enterprises do, but we're here to try and protect the entire community. So when I got up on Monday, it's like, okay, let's get back into this. Let's notify the community, say, hey, this is what's going on. Try and put up some banners on PyPI, get it across the socials, so that way the community can be aware that this is ongoing and that we are doing our best to respond. When we put up a banner on PyPI, they updated their proxy to strip that banner out. When we added a new defense, they responded in kind, right? Like, it's an arms race. So it's not easy, but it's worthwhile doing, because every step you take forces them to take a step, and then we kind of go through it all together. A quick word on kind of the infrastructure chase. I kind of went through the different things you can report. Google Safe Browsing is a public service that they provide where you can say, hey, this website, they're doing something wrong, and after they evaluate it, that database gets updated, and that's when you go to a website and either Chrome, Safari, sometimes even Mozilla, Firefox will say, hey, this is not a great website, right? Like, are you sure you want to continue on this website? But the process for that took weeks, right? Like, they don't update that as fast as I need them to update that. So, like, every step you can take in these kind of responses is worthwhile. It just takes a while for other teams to respond in kind. They don't see it as urgent as I do. So what did they actually do? So in this particular attack, num2words, which is a lovely library that turns a number into words, this was the kind of big popular one. There were a few others that kind of got it, and what they did is right here in the code, hopefully you can see it, but they attached a file called _build.py, which was not a Python file. It was a compiled DLL, wrapped it in a guard behind am I on Windows, so they were targeting Windows users, and then basically, as you use num2words, if you import it, and you have libraries that import things, it'll run on import. And the particular payload here is something called a scavenger loader. This literally was the same attack against NPM like a few weeks prior. So the fact that we have some connections to other ecosystems and can talk about vulnerabilities in campaigns is highly beneficial because it wasn't brand new that this style of attack is happening. So we got to kind of say, okay, here's what's the downstream impact. Here's what to do if you got popped. And here's what to do next. What was very funny to me is they uploaded 0515 and made a mistake in their code because writing software is hard, even attackers have trouble. And then they quickly followed it with a 0516 that patched their own malware. Right? And they also, when the maintainers were handling it, they kind of went in there and yanked the version, but they didn't invalidate the API token that the attacker had used. The attacker had used that session cookie, logged back into PyPI, generated a new API token. So they revoked the API token that they had because they thought that's the one that the attacker used, and that wasn't what the attacker used. The attacker generated their own API token to proliferate their own campaign. And the metadata is hard to kind of like get right. Everything's hard to get right. But anything that was not pinned to a num2words version prior to these either two is now installing and receiving that malware. They weren't after num2words. num2words is a dependency in a long chain. They were going after the Transformers library in Hugging Face that gets 30 million downloads a day or something ridiculously large, right? And that doesn't pin to a known version either because libraries don't often pin to an explicit version. They pin to an optimistic version to say, we know we support from here to there. But as a consumer of libraries, you absolutely should be pinning to exact versions so that way when you are installing and running your application that depends on Transformers, that depends on num2words, you don't get the new thing. Sadly, we continue to see this in the industry where application runners or library runners or end users aren't pinning, so you are getting exploited faster, and it's through no fault of your own, but at this point, it's like you gotta pin hashes, right? You should have a policy for upgrading those and evaluating those, but you are still downloading random code off the internet that you hope is safe. So you gotta pin your hashes. And I write it down here, they're not coming for you, they're coming for someone in your chain because that's easier to do and has that bigger knock-on effect. So I mentioned that like we reported those to these different vendors and suppliers. A couple of them came back and said, no, not good enough, this isn't an abuse. That like they don't see these as abuse because they haven't been kind of brought into the conversation of what malware-based open source supply chain attacks are. Many of these vendors, such as like domain registrars, they think more about the network level abuse or like distributed denial of service attacks, and they think of those of like not at the application level. So it's a journey to kind of bring them along to kind of level them up as well. But we got it eventually taken down. So a quick detour, back in January 2024, we pretty much forced everybody who maintains a package on PyPI to become a 2FA enrolled user. Two-factor authentication is better than not two-factor authentication, right? Having a strong password is better than not having a strong password. These are levels of security, right? We had so much support from this. We had a vendor providing hardware keys to anyone they could, like just to kind of level up, hey, everybody, we need this. And then we finally took a hard stance and said, this is what we're doing. We cannot tolerate our community continuously having to worry about the simple security countermeasures. Most people, when offered the 2FA option, they choose the time-based one-time token. Right? So that's that 6-digit thing. And it's great. Almost everybody knows it. You get these from your bank, from SMSs. And again, it's better than not having it, but it's still not great. Why is it not great? Because TOTP tokens are phishable as well, right? If you have a man-in-the-middle proxy, they're going to see what you have passed them. So even if they didn't get that session cookie, they still have this, and with automation, they have 30 seconds window to use this so they can get it again. The user who is inputting these tokens is also, like you saw a form, it's a form you are familiar with, you did the thing that you were supposed to do. So no shade to anybody who did the thing because you did the thing, but there's a better way forward. So some of you may be familiar with a technology called WebAuthn, which is web authentication. It's often or retermed as something called passkeys because that's a little more friendly to humans. But underpinning it, it's a private key using cryptography that basically is stored on your device. Your browser will not submit it if it's not a cryptographic chain that is validated. So you end up with a more secure approach that is harder to break. Any of the maintainers that clicked that phishing email, they were basically immune, right? Because the key looks at the URL and refuses to sign it if it's not the same URL. So in this case, the browser sees pypj.org and says, that's not anything I know. I'm not going to sign that. That's a signal to the end user as like, oh, I'm used to seeing my WebAuthn, I'm going to pass that on to the website prompt, and you won't see that here, so you won't continue down that path. And for every user relying on TOTP alone, one proxy away is that compromise. There's no 6 digits here. There's nothing you have to remember or do. The protocol will help you stay secure. So things that we did, I touched on them briefly. We revoked the attacker's API token after we knew that they had provisioned one. We yanked the malicious versions. We notified all of the compromised users that we could because there were only 4, which is great. We coordinated with, I mentioned NPM, as well as Ruby Gems. They also had these kinds of phishing campaigns. It sucks. But like there's kind of comfort in we're not alone. So having good friends in other ecosystems is really good. And even if we disagree on like language choice, syntax, and how we do it, but we all are here for open source software and kind of the proliferation of goodness in the world. But the takeaway here is I was able to do this because I get paid to do this. A lot of people in open source are volunteers, and we love your efforts. But this is incident response. This is like an emergency room doctor, right? You don't want a volunteer who might stroll by to like help with open heart surgery. You kind of need somebody who's there. And that is made absolutely possible by financial support from Alpha Omega. Please support them if you can. We published an advisory that kind of helps pip audit understand, and then that proliferates out to a larger, wider ecosystem called OSV. Lots of tools will use these to help you understand if something you are using is not healthy anymore. We added a new defense in November. So if you are using TOTP and you're coming from a new IP address, an unrecognized device, it's not a device-based, it's an IP, we will not allow you in until you get that email and then confirm that it's you. So that helps diffuse some of this attack. Again, nothing here is perfect, but if you are insistent that I must continue to use TOTP, it's going to be a little bit more one step whenever you change from an IP address. You can solve that with VPNs and have the same IP, or you can just move to WebAuthn. It's more secure. 2 months later, they did it again, right? They came out with PyPI Mirror. This one was a little bit more obvious to people, and it was same email template. This is a persistent rotating idea, right? It's not hard for them to register a domain and send a bunch of emails. Like it's increasingly cheaper to do. But the next email or domain is already registered, and they're already figuring out what vector to do, right? Like it's coming. It's going to happen. So I think there's going to be more attacks. There's going to be more domains. There's going to be more of everything because this community has built an amazing ecosystem of really valuable software packages that people use a lot. So what you can do in order to kind of save yourself from all of this chaos. First, move to WebAuthn, do it today, right? It's pretty straightforward. If you already have a PyPI account, you can log in to your account and say, yep, I'm going to add this as another feature. You don't have to take TOTP away. But if you add WebAuthn, it's a more seamless experience, it's more secure, and then you don't have to click an email to confirm. You can let your password manager, if you use a vendor such as 1Password or that's one I use. There are other ones. It will autofill based on your browser, so you don't even have to think about a lot of stuff. It's just they're implementing that WebAuthn exchange token, and then you sync that across your devices. So you're like, oh, wait, what happens when my device gets bricked or I need to replace it? You can sync it across. Those are pretty good secure. But like, the most easy thing is like, slow down. When you get an email with a link, just hover on it for a second. On mobile, you can put your thumb on it, hover on it, and it'll show you what that URL is. Just take a moment. I'm not saying you have to do this with your DoorDash order, right? Like your delivery is here, hover, no, go to the door and get it, right? But when you're dealing with things that are a little bit more sensitive than your food order, you probably want to take a moment and say, this sounds like a security thing I'm being asked to. Let me put my security engineer hat on and hover, because Mike told me to. Let go of long-lived tokens, right? This is another thing that attackers love to go after and exploit. They keep doing this on different places. We have trusted publishing, which is a great mechanism to reduce the impact of long-lived tokens. These tokens kind of expire after 15 minutes. I forget the number exactly, but it limits the scope. It's only for that one package that you're publishing at that time. And it generally, I show the GitHub workflow here. Like you have to add a line and then say use an action, and then you need to delete the token, right? A lot of folks have migrated to trusted publishing and they leave the token there. It's like you've adopted the new thing, that's great. Take away the old thing, right? Remove one layer of attack. I want to leave you with this line because it's the most honest thing I can say about it. There's no quick and easy fix, right? The only durable is phishing-resistant 2FA. Phishing is a common attack pattern. People are going to do it. They're just going to keep trying because the value is they only have to get one or two of you, right? They can spam 100,000. If they get one or two, that's a success for them. But we can't afford that, right? We need everybody to be diligent because that one person can have a huge impact on the downstream. In the meantime, the humans in the loop, the maintainers, admins, volunteers working on weekends, those are load-bearing, right? Figure out ways you can support your ecosystems, your Python Software Foundation, PyPI, with either financial, have your company, figure out a way to support, but most importantly, we can try and solve stuff on the index side, but you still have to be an active participant in the security story. We can't do it all because you are all part of this story. I have a few minutes left. If you have any questions that you want to surface, we've got some mic runners that will get over to you so we can hear them. Raise a hand. But other than that, thank you so much to coming here and listening.
What do you know about the attacker?
Oh, what do I know about the attacker? Not much. So the attackers, we can kind of use IP and user agent data, but those are infinitely mockable. A lot of attackers use VPNs, and they bounce around different locations. They mock user agents. There's not a whole lot of signal we can get out of there. We were able to find kind of their hosting, and that's what we were able to take down. We were able to find their domain registrar. We were able to ask for that to be taken down. There's not a whole lot, right? They know how to evade detection just as much as we want them to not do it. They want to do it. Yep. Over here.
I can't believe I'm going to suggest this, but when you talk to domain registrars about getting something taken down, have you thought about using trademark? Because that is something I think that they do understand.
So that's a great idea. I think in the immediacy of incident response, I don't think we thought of that at all. But I'll file that away and let's have a trademark pre-ready for the next attack. Thank you.
Hi.
Yep.
I think you mentioned that there were four instances of, I guess you're saying, maintainers who had their packages exposed this way. So is that correct?
So no, there were 4 maintainers who clicked the email, logged in, and had their account exposed, but only one of them had a package that was exploited.
Okay, so my question is, for this one package that was exploited, do you have an estimate or the analytics on how many times that package was then downloaded afterwards?
I don't have those for this incident right here, but you can obtain those because all of the download counts are available on BigQuery. It's a query. We have the timing. You can find it out yourself.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi. When you talked about pinning versions for your packages, but eventually needing to decide to update, if you're the lone maintainer of a package and you're deciding how do I know if I can update all my packages, what are some of the processes that can be made to ensure you're doing that, in a secure way?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Increasingly, because most open source projects rely on other open source projects, because why write everything yourself? It becomes a transitive dependency problem. There's a few tactics you can employ. You can use tools like Dependabot or RenovateBot that will manage those updates for you. But again, they're not doing any kind of inspection. They're just saying, there's a new version, here it is, right? You can apply something called a dependency cooldown, which says, basically, this new version 0515 was released 5 minutes ago. I'm going to wait 3 days or 7 days. I'm going to sit on that, let it kind of stew for a little bit before I want it. And that gives a lot of our security community that breathing room to evaluate and examine these packages, so that way you yourself aren't on the front line. You're not on the bleeding edge, as it were. Most of these attacks are resolved within hours on a workday. We had 2 others, Elite LLM and Telnex, and we responded to those in under 4 hours. So anybody within that 4-hour window got hurt, but anyone who was on a dependency cooldown has that breathing room and nothing happened to them. Over here.
This may be a naive question, but it's kind of surprising to me that so much of industry depends on PyPI and open source software, but we have funding for just one security engineer. So what can we do to sort of get the get the word out there? We need more sponsors. For this.
That's not a question, right? We need more sponsors, right? It's true. It's hard. Security is not the sexy part of any software development, right? Maintenance is often in your own companies and lives and works. Is not the fun part. It's the thing you need to do that you need to account for that in cost. And if you work for an employer that has some funding to make an open source fund and figure out not just PyPI, but also the packages you maintain, right? There's lots of maintainers out there who are doing this for the love of the job, and they'd like to do this full time, and that kind of helps everybody. So send money.
In your experience, whether it be through this or other kind of security issues, what kind of insights do you have into the attackers? Are they often like nation states? Are they individual bad actors? Do you have any insights?
Yeah, so I would love to say that I have really good dossiers on everyone, but I don't, right? I'm not in the business of doing OS intelligence right now. Well, we'd love to expand into that arena and kind of know who's coming after us. We rely on a lot of our security partners to talk about, like, this attack, the scavenger loader, is predominant from this attacker group because they're better at kind of fingerprinting patterns. I think we're out of time. Unless I think they're putting them away. So thank you again, everybody. I'll be around outside if you want to chit chat about stuff, but thanks again.